Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Dan, hang tight. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to panel 3. Thank you for joining us. Wait, why do I see 0 people? Hang tight a second, everyone. There we go. People are starting to show up. Great. Thank you for joining us on panel 3. We had a wonderful first couple of panels. This is exciting. I'm going to step out of the way in the interest of time, and we'll let Teresa take it over from here. I'll be in the background should you all need anything.
Okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on downtown and suburban development game-changing projects. I am Teresa Metcalf-Beasley, your moderator. I am the chair of the Public Law Group at McDonald-Hopkins. And today with us, we have Stephanie Finley, Matthew Weiner, Dan Whalen, and Stephanie McCarto. And I've asked each of the panelists to introduce themselves, what they do, and in the process of introducing themselves to discuss game-changing projects in the city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, and tell our audience about at least one game-changing project that you're working on and why you in particular consider it to be a game changer. And why don't we start with Stephanie Finley?
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I am Vice President of Fund Management for Omni Senior Living. And Omni develops Vitalia active adult communities in the Northeast Ohio area. And those active adult communities focus on independent living, assisted living, memory care. As my role, we have 4 different private equity funds that raise capital for the equity component of our developments. And actually, we're in the process of raising our 5th fund to date. And my role is to manage the process of raising those funds, relationships with investors. I also head our analyst team. So we're a very analytical company. We do tons of market feasibilities on the sites that we're looking at, the financial underwritings for the fund, and all of that stuff. So that's what I do. That's what Omni does. And in terms of game-changing projects, honestly, I would say in a way, all projects that we do are game-changing to us because of the value that's created with each of our developments. And certainly the locations that we pick, it's a lot of time and effort to bring them to fruition. If I had to pick one, I would say our project in Solon, Ohio is probably the biggest game changer for us as a company. And the reason for that is we've always had a dream of developing both senior living here and moving our corporate headquarters to Solon. The demographics are phenomenal for a senior development, and truthfully, we've been looking for a site for probably the last 5 years to be able to do that here. It's just been a matter of finding the right piece of land and getting it rezoned because you don't have any pieces that fit that qualification to date. So we ended up finding a site. We had to go to referendum rezoning and put it through the election, and we did end up getting that. We passed it, and the zoning changed on the site, and we've been developing our senior community. It's opening in September. We have 45 of the units pre-leased, and the really neat thing is that our office headquarters opened earlier this year. We are right next to the site, and we got to build this project from ground up and really make it our own, and it encompasses a lot of the cultural sides of what we do. For example, lots of open spaces. You can see behind me the glass walls. Just allows for a lot of collaboration. So it's really exciting to have this brand new space and then have our flagship senior community right next door.
Okay, thank you, Steph. And as we go through the panel discussion, I'd like to hear more about how you define the term game changer. So next we have Matthew Weiner. If you would introduce yourself and tell us about your game-changing project and what makes you think it's a game-changing project.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Matthew Weiner. I am a transactional real estate lawyer and the co-manager of East-West Alliance. East-West Alliance develops commercial and residential projects in southeastern United States and also in Ohio, and has a particular focus on bringing foreign investment money into these projects. I myself spent a lot of time living and working for investment funds in Central Eastern Europe, so that's the genesis of that relationship. In Cleveland, we have a partnership with J-Rock Development and Alfred Geis to develop what we feel is clearly a groundbreaking project. We have a project called Thunderbird, which is in the West Bank area of the Flats on a peninsula, which is commonly referred to as the Scranton Peninsula. It's the last big parcel available in the West Bank Flats, to my knowledge, and is right on the Cuyahoga River, has an interesting history. It was first occupied in 1828 by a trapper and hunter named Scranton and Averill, who started their trapping and fur sales business there. And later it was occupied by Republic Steel and became a little bit of an environmentally challenged site, which we had to figure out. And now we are delivering a mixed-use project there, which was master planned by Perkins and Will, which is a global kind of design firm, which is very highly regarded. To date, we have sold about a third of it to Great Lakes Brewing Company, which we hope will have a community serving use there. And we are just getting ready to deliver a 30,000-foot office building, which is very interesting because it will be one of the first deliveries in this post-COVID environment.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. Steph Mercado, let's go to you.
Sorry. My name is Steph Mercado. I am a partner at Corman Jackson Krantz. I chair our economic development practice group. I work mainly with developers and companies who are looking to engage in some sort of real estate development. And I work on site selection, incentive negotiation, and deal closing. In terms of game-changing projects, we're working on several large projects right now, but one that first is probably out in the public realm, so best suited for this session for public discussion, is looking at a large redevelopment project on Superior Avenue between Superior, Payne, East 21st and East 22nd. Looking at the site for redevelopment for corporate headquarters, some multifamily, and a small out of retail. This is game changing because number one, it's driven by opportunity, the fact that the property's in an opportunity zone. So it was one of the first larger projects in Cleveland to be driven by that status. And then the second, I need to go back and think through projects in the past, but really since Eaton relocated and then out of downtown Cleveland, and then looking at American Greetings moving out to Crocker Park. Apart from NRP moving to the Halley building, it's probably one of the first major headquarter projects where you're seeing that reverse, moving from a suburban location to potentially downtown. Nothing's final yet. We've been working on this for quite some time. We recently were awarded tax credits on the site, need to reapply for again, but so the project's looking good. No, but a lot can happen in the next couple of months. But the reason why it would be a game changer is the status and then at that corporate headquarter relocation back into the urban center.
Thank you. And Dan Whalen.
Good morning. I'll be quick so we can jump into the questions here, but I work with Harbor Bay Real Estate out of the Chicago area, and our major project taking place right now at the corner of 25th and Lorraine in Ohio City, immediately next to the West Side Market. If you've driven by, you've seen it under construction. We started back in April. It's going to consist of 35,000 square feet of retail, 298 apartments, a rooftop event venue, and over 1 acre of public green space. So we're really excited about it. I guess the elements that make it a game changer would be the fact that it is a brand new type of construction for the Midwest, and that is mass timber. So it'll be the tallest wooden building in the United States upon completion. it's going to be beautiful. All the wood inside is exposed, columns, beams, ceilings. And in terms of sustainability, it'll be the first LEED Gold certified residential project in Northeast Ohio to our knowledge. And we're working really hard to execute it and make it something that Cleveland's never seen before. I think being right next to the West Side Market certainly plays a big role. And it'll hopefully spur some redevelopment and reinvestment of that property, as well as being along the transit line with RTA station at the corner, and just the overall continued progress in Ohio City. I think it's a really important project at one of Northeast Ohio's most predominant intersections.
Thanks, Dan. And this is a question for everyone. So if there are other game-changing projects that you're aware of that we've not discussed, please chime in. And I want to follow up, as I mentioned earlier, what defines a game-changing project? You know, what makes it transformational? Is it the job creation? Is it filling a void in a neighborhood, a residential need, a commercial need? And just anyone can speak to this, please. Not all at once, though.
Sure, I'll start.
Thank you.
You know, I think more than anything, Cleveland does need an influx of new jobs, and whether it's corporate relocations from the suburbs to the city, I think a strong core is what makes, you know, the most important aspect of having a really strong Northeast Ohio in general. I grew up in Cleveland, went to school there, so even though I'm in Chicago now, I do know Cleveland very well, and our project is a passion project for me, being back in my hometown. But I think in order to see continued progress on residential and on other aspects of just hotels and green space and things of that nature, you really have to have a strong core of jobs. And obviously COVID's thrown things for a loop right now, but I think Cleveland has a really big opportunity to kind of step in and really start to attract some of these companies that are determining if these expensive East Coast and West Coast office presence are still necessary, or if the Midwest is a more attractive option for them.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm kind of following up on Dan's points. Made a list of a couple of additional projects. Top of the list, it should be a game changer on everyone's list, is Sherwin headquarters, and seeing that construction underway downtown. The second project that was on my list is looking at the $1 billion transformation that Metro is putting into its campus and supporting projects. The next is actually tied to kind of what's going on with the Thunderbird development. The work going on at Irishtown Bend, I think, is noteworthy. I know there's some people might think that it's a park, a nice park that's going into added as a community amenity, but really looking at it from a infrastructure funding project, and looking at the work that all of the community stakeholders put in to leverage a significant amount of federal funds coming in to help stabilize the hill, which really helps helps freighters get up and down the river. But I think just that model of teamwork to leverage additional resources into the city and the region is going to be critical as we recover from the pandemic and continue to grow. And I think that the final one that I had on the list is just the continuing investment of Amazon, whether it be through mall redevelopment, mass file facilities, just that's they continue to invest here in the city and the region.
Those are all excellent projects. All excellent. And the fact that Sherwin-Williams decided to keep their headquarters in downtown Cleveland is a game changer, because those parking lots have been vacant. I mean, they're surface lots, and there's so much opportunity for development there. So thank you for bringing those up. Matthew or Stephanie, anything else you'd like to add? And anyone, we are taking questions through the chat box if people would like to chime in, and some of the questions are part of what we want to discuss. So, but Dan, one thing you mentioned was the pandemic. So we have learned I mean, everything's changed. The way we do business, the way we market, the way we look at game-changing transformational projects. So to you and Steph, if you would think about this for me, and I think, Dan, you really started touching on this, the biggest potential growth for the city of Cleveland as a result of the pandemic. And what are those drivers for us to recruit more people, recruit more jobs and stuff? This also goes to some of the game-changing projects that you just mentioned with Amazon, et cetera. So what are the drivers for Cleveland to have more game-changing projects?
Well, I think first and foremost, it does have to be a bit of a political discussion. I think that Cleveland needs a champion at the top for its progress, for something better than average. I think right now, a lot of the leadership in place is just okay with status quo. That's probably going to ruffle some feathers, but it's the truth. I think you have to have somebody out leading the charge to recruit, to champion the city of Cleveland, to tout its livability, the fact that our park systems is one of the largest and most well-kept park systems in the country, and the fact that the cost of living here is still well below 45 of the other top 50 metropolitan areas in the country. So I think first and foremost is that. Secondarily, the corporate environment here. I think the companies that are leaders in Cleveland, the Sherwin-Williams, the key banks, a number of law firms and other financial institutions really have to kind of take ownership and take charge to show that Cleveland is a successful place to own and run a company, that we have talent, that we can recruit talent. We've got 10 to 12 solid universities in and around the Cleveland area. So there are people here, and I think trying to keep the people that are educated in Cleveland post-grad is another important step. Reinvesting in transit, reinvesting in infrastructure, the airport, all of these things kind of really take toll in recruiting these types of companies and in those types of jobs, even more so than the projects themselves that we're talking about. I think all the stuff that I mentioned plays a vital role in attracting more companies, more projects, and eventually trickles into residential and hotels and you name it down the line.
And Dan, I hear what you're saying. We have a lot of these items already in place. The drivers are there. It's just about someone's taking more ownership and promoting the city of Cleveland. And Steph, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I look at the biggest opportunity for growth, kind of in whatever stage of the pandemic we are at this point in time, and then once we move out of it, kind of looking at what is our core economy here in Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, and how we're supporting that. And I think the best way, or one of the ways that we can capitalize on that, is really through supply chain predictability. If you look at a lot of the decisions that companies are making right now in terms of onshoring, if there's vertical integration, if they are consolidating operations from other states, we have several anchor institutions. We have our economy is historically built on manufacturing. We still have a significant amount of manufacturing here in the region. So really looking at those anchor companies, anchor institutions, and how we are building our economy around their supply chain predictability and future demands is what the rest of the growth in the region really is dependent on, in terms of looking at residential development, in terms of any other development that would spur from that activity.
And one of our comments that just came through from Victor Voinovich is, has Cleveland truly leveraged the prominence of the Cleveland Clinic being ranked as number 2? So again, that's another driver. Mm-hmm. Dan, were you about to weigh in on that?
I think the Cleveland Clinic does a good job of leveraging the prominence of the Cleveland Clinic. But we have really 3 top-notch hospitals, and Cleveland Clinic's in an echelon of their own. But, Steph mentioned the Metro Health expansion and redevelopment. That's, a $2 billion project right down the street from Ohio City. Obviously, we have UH, that's a major system and player in town. and healthcare is something that over time is going to be, even a larger component of Cleveland's success. And, I think if you talk about what the financial hub and the economic hub of Cleveland is, you probably are looking east towards University Circle as opposed to, downtown as it used to be. So I think we have an opportunity, really to leverage that. The government is also one of Cleveland's top employers. So these are things that aren't going away. These are things that we can expound upon and improve upon and continue to draw people here for. I think we do need to push more to leverage the biotech and the things that spur from the healthcare piece of things. But there's plenty of work to do. And, Sherwin-Williams is a good start, but the more companies that we can try to pull into the city, I think the better.
Okay, thank you. And this question will be directed towards Stephanie and Matthew. And this is a question from Suzanne Hamilton. And the reason I give it to the two of you is because it talks about the approval process in municipalities. Her question is, how is the approval process with the municipalities agencies for the projects? And Stephanie, you mentioned you had to go through a referendum. And Matthew, where you're located, I would expect there might have been some challenges to your approval process. So might the two of you weigh in on that question?
Sure. I can start if you want. I think for us, for the projects that we've seen, we often have to go through the municipalities to be able to rezone a site to get it, just because the use that we have is not a common one that you have a lot of available land just ready to go for. Certainly, the approval process involves getting the cities on board and really understanding why we want to do what we do. And for us, I think going back a little bit to the game changer question, for us in our industry, the game changing piece of it is allowing the seniors to be able to stay in the neighborhoods that they've lived in, and they don't have to move somewhere else to get the care that they want, have the quality of life that they want. They'll have their friends with them. And I think it's getting the cities to really understand that piece of it, and getting them on board. And really that's the biggest hurdle of what we have to do in the sales process with them, if you will.
And a follow-up question, what about the residents? Have you had issues or concerns raised by them that you had to overcome?
In terms of like projects that we already have operating?
Or even the one in Solon when you were going through your approval process? They
actually are the ones that are typically backing us, because they don't have the options that are around here. And I think Solon is a great example, because there really is no competitors who offer the lifestyle that we offer and the different care types that we offer in Solon, Ohio. So they're the ones that are actually speaking out. And we oftentimes partner with like the senior centers of the communities. And they usually have a very strong backing, because they're the ones where the seniors will go and they'll voice their opinions there. And then when we come into town and we start that process, they're really the ones that are backing us through it. And that allows then the city to see also where we're coming from. So I think they're definitely a huge benefit to us as we're going through the process.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, how was your approval process?
It's largely non-existent, because what we have done is complete master planning, and we're on a piece of land which is industrially zoned. And we think that any other zoning would receive very favorable support from the community and from council and from everybody else that would have to weigh in. But we're just not there yet, where we're encountering those kinds of issues. But as I said, in our case, we just expect a lot of support for whatever we do there, because it will be a better use than there is now. For our office building, it was an existing building which we've renovated, so we didn't have much of an approval process to go through.
Okay, thank you. And
one thing I just want to add to what Stephanie said, it had to do with her comment about collaboration of entities and enhancing sites, and she mentioned it in the context of Irishtown Bend. We're doing the same thing to extend the walking trail around the site, and that's been a good use of time and a very good effort by J-Rock Development to help us get there. And we think that will enhance the whole site. And that particular act is just by itself generating a lot of support for what we're doing on the peninsula.
Okay, collaboration is the key. Hey,
Yep.
Dan, because your project is mass timber, the first in the area, was your permitting process smooth?
No. It was an educational process. So we had spent about a year ourselves learning, understanding the material and how it functions and what the benefits are. And there are a slew of benefits outside of just the aesthetic of it, from constructability, from the structural nature of it. It actually is fire resistant, which is a bit counterintuitive to people that consider wood as a resource and building material. But then we went to the building department and we really started educating them in the fire department and bringing them in. We spent about $100,000 doing studies and tests to get them comfortable with what we were doing. And luckily the code is being tweaked nationally for this material, but we wanted to push the boundaries a bit further. We have a historic site, in terms of it sitting directly across the street from one of the most important buildings in town. And we wanted to do something significant as well. We didn't just want to throw up a 4 or 5 story building with no significance to it. And so we really started figuring out, what do we want to do to make this different, and what do we want to do to make it more impactful, and that's where we went, and it eventually snowballed into what it is today. But it was about a 1.5 year process, but I will give kudos to the building department, the fire department, for being open-minded, because you don't find that in every municipality as you work to build new projects, and especially ones that are innovative and different than what they've seen before.
Okay, do you expect to build another one in Cleveland or Northeast Ohio?
It's very possible. It's very possible. We're going to see, what we learned from this first one. We do have more land there next to the project in Ohio City. And obviously, with the pandemic at this point in time, it'll be interesting to see how quickly things rebound. I do think everything's going to come back. And I actually think, like we alluded to before, that Cleveland's going to be the beneficiary of some of those changes that happen nationally. But it'll just be a matter of when and how long until we're kind of clawing our way back to normal.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, let's go back to you. Unless other people on the panel like to weigh in on any about zoning, well, not zoning, but the approval process. And if not, Matthew, tell me, how do game-changing projects actually transform the asset or the market area? But when I hear game-changing, what should I expect to see as a result of a game-changing project in that market area?
Matthew, I had to turn your microphone off. It was feeding back, so hit that mic button again.
Better? Okay, good. Yeah, a project can transform a neighborhood or even a city. And there's some pretty good examples of that. I mean, besides our, what we aspire for our own Thunderbird project, my background is a little bit more international. The most glaring example I can think of is the city of Rotterdam, which was really devastated by World War II and left with a bunch of empty brick apartment buildings, which they began to rent to bona fide artists for $1. And the result of that was that all around those apartments, galleries and coffee shops and restaurants sprung up. And now you have a large and vibrant district, which is whole, which has, all kinds of industries and is a lifestyle place to live. One other example where I used to work is in Prague in the Czech Republic. They actually transformed the King's Old Riding Hall from 1000 AD, later used to store Soviet tanks, into about a 1 million square foot mixed use project, which about 8 years ago was Central Europe's largest real estate sale. So those kinds of projects are very transformational. More close to home, our hope for our own project is that the mixed use nature will make it a great neighborhood, and the development of the trail and hopefully the Great Lakes site and the avian office building that we're delivering will begin to take shape and meld together and bring some synergy and and turn into another groundbreaking project.
Okay, thanks. And important, let's talk about the Cleveland tax abatement. As we know, Cleveland just completed their study. I think it was in about 6 months. And there were several recommendations that came out. And the most important was that the abatement should continue. And this is part of Robert Weeks' question as well. He asks, how many game-changing projects will we have without incentives, such as tax abatement in the city of Cleveland? And other communities, it's not just the city of Cleveland that offers incentives for developers. So there were some recommendations that came out, and Matthew, also you touched on is the multi-use, because in their study they found there were more multi-family rather than single-family projects taking advantage of the tax abatement. So Dan, I'd like to start with you, and I would hope that all will weigh in, because we find that a developer will say, but for these incentives, he or she would not be able to complete the project. So Dan, you're right in the heart of downtown with your project, and I believe you have a tax abatement and a TIF for the project.
Yeah, yep, that's correct. Originally we were planning 2 buildings in a single phase here. So the scars are still healing from that debacle in the fall of 19. But we had planned for a basically speculative office building to go right next door to our residential tower that was actually going to be taller. In Cleveland, there's not too much spec office that gets built, period, let alone to the scale that we were talking about in what's really a neighborhood. Ohio City is different than the CBD, but we did go in and we said, without tax abatement on the office, which is going to in time spur additional 1,000 jobs possibly, we can't build it. And we did debate with the city on that, and we ended up not pursuing the office building. And I guess in hindsight, now that we're into this COVID-19 pandemic, it may be a good thing in terms of just timing, but I still think there's an opportunity for that later on down the road. But yeah, in Cleveland, people are used to affordability, and with affordability, the rents are lower than other markets, and the cost to build are not. The cost to build are every bit as expensive as they are in cities like Chicago, and that creates problems, right? Because you have an imbalance between costs and income, and that's where you have to fill gaps, and the public's got to be involved. And you've seen lots of projects get proposed over the years that never get built because they have to stack up 30 to 50 different sources of financing, and by the time that happens, it implodes or the market changes or equity dries up, whatever it may be. We need to kind of get past that and realize that these types of game-changing projects that everyone here is working on in the 9 figures and above range, that they do require city participation and incentive to spur what hopefully is a long-lasting economic benefit for a broader audience.
So you agree that the tax abatement should be continued in the city of Cleveland?
I do, and I think the residential is one piece, but I do think they need to figure out a separate means and methods to incentivize those jobs that I talked about before. If developers or companies are coming in and willing to bring new jobs to the area or the state or the region as a whole, I think there should be similar things in play for that, because those jobs eventually bring the incomes that buy the houses that spend the money in the retail stores and restaurants.
Okay. Thank you. Stephanie, for your new project in Solon, did you have incentives from the city? No, that's Stephanie.
Me, right?
Yes.
Actually,
did you have incentives from the city, state? Oh.
We did not have incentives from the city to do that project. But I think with senior living, your projects, like we never really will explore things such as tax abatements, TIFs, Port Authority bond financing, but we don't typically use those as determining if a project is viable or not. And I think it's a blessing because our projects are such cash cows, if you will. They don't need to rely on that kind of thing. But certainly we'll look into those things to enhance the returns to our investors. I think what we have noticed with the pandemic is the way that our projects are structured, the banks are really tightening a lot of their terms. So we're relying on more costly capital to be able to fund our projects. So we're actually exploring ways to get cheaper capital, such as preferred equity or mezz financing or stuff like that to offset some of the tightening from the lenders.
Right. And Steph?
Sure. Maybe I'll kind of respond to the question from a site selection standpoint, and maybe not city of Cleveland exactly specific. So all site selection decisions are made based on speed, money, and risk, as applied to certain requirements of the end use of the project. So communities and states are competing for investment on a daily basis. Sometimes you know what you're competing against, other times you don't know. So kind of looking at it from a speed, money, and risk standpoint, communities that have defined incentive policies that are predictable, that have been executed on quickly and are reliable so that the investor or the company or whoever is driving that site selection decision can have confidence in that, the communities that have that predictable policy will continue to win investment. The communities that don't have that policy in place will continue to struggle to win projects. So I think from it specifically is applied to the tax abatement, keeping it in place and having, once again, that predictable policy will help to continue to support Cleveland winning investment. I think that the second question would be, do projects need to be incentivized to move forward? Following up on Dan's comments, the reality is that we've got a heavy industrial legacy that has lasting impacts in our inventory that we have for either redevelopment or new construction. We're also on a body of water, and all of that adds just some really unique aspects to the redevelopment process, which ultimately drive the cost of development, but unfortunately don't really have that driver of cost on the rent that's coming in or the income coming in for the project. So to continue to help these projects be viable, yes, we definitely need all the support that we can get to help projects move forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have Matt respond to the question, but I do want to come back to site selection because that's so key. And I'd like to hear from you guys how you determine the best site and what you're looking for. But Matthew, because you are not just North Cleveland, Ohio, Northeast, but you're also international, other locations, what do you see with respect to incentives being offered for various projects? You're on. We can't.
Get your microphone again.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, most locales are offering incentives of some type or another. So, I mean, to stay competitive, I think Cleveland has to. Probably the most interesting thing I've seen outside of Cleveland are the efforts to rescue and reuse tall office buildings that folks are afraid of losing occupancy in. And that's largely a COVID thing and a result of the COVID thing. It's hard to ride up an elevator to go to your 12th floor office if only two people can be in an elevator at a time. And it's causing people to really rethink how to use these tall buildings. One trend which is emerging is converting them into sort of high-end condominiums. I think we'll see a good deal more of that. And I think that because of COVID, the whole logistics sector is exploding, particularly in Savannah, Georgia, where I live, which is a port city. But I can imagine that logistics is important absolutely everywhere.
Okay, thank you. So, very good input. So tell me about site selection. And Dan, when you introduced yourself, you talked about your game-changing project, the location, etc. And Steph, I expect that depending on the project, the use of the property, what am I looking for? What should people be looking for, and how do we support that?
If you want to go, or you want?
Yeah,
want me
sure.
to take-
Yeah.
Dan?
Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously every company has different hurdles and things that they need to meet, or different metrics and different things that they look for. For us, we like to be pretty targeted, and we go after what we kind of call irreplaceable dirt, in that things that in the immediate vicinity have things that no other site can really say that they have. And for us in Cleveland, it was the West Side Market. It's a very busy transit station, and then it's that fact that it's on a main corner in a neighborhood that has a lot of authenticity and character to it. So those things, along with a lot of the planned greenways and parks that we talked about earlier, those for us were major factors. And we'll also go and look at sites that have a lot of difficulty in terms of their assemblage, or do take a lot of work to get entitled, things of that nature, so that that kind of thins the herd, if you will, of other developers that may be wanting to take a look at those sites for the reasons that Steph mentioned. Speed being the foremost, and risk. We play the long game. We typically hold our assets. We don't usually joint venture with anyone, so all the equity is coming out of our office, and that allows us to kind of control all the pieces, parts, as things get put together, and really take our time, get to the end game that we're looking for, and really have an A+ site with an A+ property on it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've seen, I would say maybe I'll respond to this kind of real time, kind of in the midst of where we are in the pandemic. I've seen, in terms of, once again, that speed, money, and risk, a huge emphasis on speed right now. Decisions are being made significantly faster, and it's really as a result of companies making evaluations and decisions as to how they're going to respond and hopefully thrive after the pandemic. It could be the need to consolidate an operation. In that case, you need to make sure that you've got an immediate available workforce in the particular location you're consolidating into, and that you've got enough square footage, or you've got the ability to expand. You could be launching a new product, but to be ready to step on the gas after we come out of the pandemic, all of the work is going in right now. So if we're looking at it from a real estate development, those sites that are more shovel ready, or those communities that are better prepared with a plan to address maybe deficiencies in the site, if it's not complete site ready, but shovel ready, but they've got a plan of how to move forward, are going to win out over some of the projects that take longer from a site assembly standpoint, or if there's environmental issues or otherwise.
And Steph, thank you. And if they're moving more quickly, it's about speed. How are they handling the financing? Because I don't think our financial institutions are moving as quickly with respect to projects, and certain projects, hotels, they still aren't really touching. So how do you pair those two things together?
I think the activity that I'm seeing quick decisions on are looking at more industrial, logistics, warehousing, distribution at this point in time. So given the demand, I haven't seen, there's still work to be put into helping the project move forward, but based on the current market demand for it, have been there are obstacles, but they're not insurmountable to move forward from a financing standpoint.
Okay.
Would you say that office folks are a little slower to make decisions?
Yes, correct.
It seems that they're trying to figure out how much working from home is going to work and how much it's not. One thing I just wanted to add to the site selection conversation, one attribute, which was never an attribute until recently, is remoteness. I think suddenly folks are not as interested to have other offices as immediate neighbors and share common corridors and hallways and elevators. So it seems to me there's more of an emphasis on finding discrete sites. Normally, I subscribe exactly to what Dan said in terms of irreplaceable dirt, but just in this current market, it seems that some people like dirt, which is a little bit out of the way and and a little bit discreet. And the other thing that it seems to me folks are interested in is the ability to build out spaces the way that they want to, in such a way as to allow social distancing and things like that. A very small example of that in the office building that we're delivering, we're now putting conference rooms in the front of the building so that folks don't have to pass through work areas in order to attend a conference. The same with luncheon areas, discrete HVAC and things that you don't have everybody sharing common air, and even a station to kind of sanitize when you walk into a building.
Stephanie, what have you had to do in your senior assisted living facilities with respect to your seniors as a result of the pandemic? And what do you see happening post-pandemic?
Well, as you know, the senior population is at high risk for COVID-19. I think where we were a little bit ahead of the game in terms of the industry is that you already have a lot of infection control procedures that are in place, because you have things like the flu and other viruses that are very, very contagious to the senior population. So you always have to be prepared in the way that you control those things as well. So what we've done during the pandemic is actually, in order to kind of keep people more isolated and quarantined and be able to track who they're in association with, we've created zones within our community. So those people in each zone then can interact with each other. So you're not losing the socialization piece of it, but you're also keeping it a much more controlled environment. But I think the hardest thing for the seniors is, not having that face-to-face interaction with family members. There was a period there where you couldn't have outside visitors coming in and seeing, and you still can't have them coming within that's a protocol that we're keeping just to keep everyone safe. So now any visit that occurs has to be outside where there's fresh air and not in an enclosed area. But it's hard on them to be in that isolated state and not have that same type of interaction with the people that they love. So I think with that, we've also been able to turn a little bit more to technology. And that's something that, again, seniors are not that savvy with, and they have turned and are becoming more savvy with it because they've had to become that way. So they've had to FaceTime family members. They've had to even virtual events within the communities. And then certainly in terms of just the labor side, we've had to shift a little bit towards technology as well. So like temperature takers for people walking in the building. There's just a lot of safety procedures that we need to keep in mind. And I think those will continue going into the future. And that's something that's going to stick within the industry going forward.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And you sort of led into our closing question about lessons learned from the pandemic and the way we do business, the way we will be doing business. So do you, because I like to hear from each of you, and I think we have about 4 minutes to close. So Stephanie, do you have anything to add to what you just said with respect to the closing question? And then I'll go to you.
I think the only thing I would add is on the technology side, gearing ourselves up as an industry to also be more that way on the marketing piece of it as well, because senior living is so, the biggest piece of our leads and the most leads generated is through people who drive by the building or word of mouth, because people don't want to move their family members into a place where there's not a great reputation. It's different than, it's a big move for someone, and they want to have the confidence that that's the right place for mom or dad wants to be a part of that. So I think there's been a shift just in marketing in general as well, because again, with a shutdown and having that lead source virtually turned off for a couple months, we've had to shift in the way that we're advertising and marketing and making people feel comfortable enough to make that move and feel like they can make that safely.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, followed by Matthew.
I think the one thing that I always try to stay firm on is not jumping to conclusions or acting too quickly. I think I see a lot of companies now that are talking about permanent remote moves and permanent whatever. I think to do anything permanently as a result of something that we actually don't even know how is going to finish, or what the true outcomes of this pandemic are going to be. To say you're going to do something permanently, forever, indefinitely is a rash decision. So I think there will be some things coming out of the pandemic that do stay, that are permanent changes, and other things that kind of revert back, right? Like working remotely works for some people and not for others. I know that in our business, even just doing things this way as we're on this call and acknowledging some of the challenges with technology and sound and person-to-person interaction and accomplishing things is tougher. And then in terms of real estate, determining what spatial needs companies are going to need, or how apartments need to be changed to address some of the health concerns, things of that nature. It's good that we have to think about that stuff, because for a long time before, no one was. But I definitely think, we're cautious about doing what are really in real estate changes and decisions that you make for buildings that are fairly permanent. I mean, it's tough to say anything socially or across the board as a result of COVID is something that's never going to go back to the way it was before. So that's just one of, I guess, lessons learned for us is really just sit back, wait, not get too high or too low on any moment in time, and really try to address what we think are going to be long-term aspects of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, lessons learned. You need to hit your mic.
Keeps turning me off. I feel just a little bit differently than Dan. I think that the pandemic has facilitated a lot of changes that we're coming for a while and will stay. I think that some companies will permanently slim down, and working from home and working informally and less in clusters will be something that stays at least for a while. And so we need to shift with it. And with it comes much more of an emphasis on technology and logistics and things being shipped and delivered and brought to us in our homes.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Steph.
Yeah, I think my lessons learned probably a little bit less specific to real estate development and just overall mindset, but just be comfortable kind of living and working in this gray area. Nothing's black or white, and just you can control your own actions, and you're going to make the decisions that you have with the best information that you have. But we're all in this, and just be comfortable in the space that we're in right now.
Well said. I believe we are at the end of our time, so I'd like to thank each of you for your participation today and sharing your thoughts, and also to those who joined us virtually as well.
Yeah, what a great group. What a great panel. It's good to hear from you all. I like that you're not stuck on COVID. I've said it in a lot of panels now, and everybody seems to not be able to get off it. The fact that you talked about site selection, new deals, things moving forward is really refreshing, because the world does go on, even though it doesn't feel like it from our houses right now, but we are moving forward. So thank you for that. I got to say one last thank you to all of these sponsors. Without these folks, we wouldn't have been able to do set up a live event, pivot to this event, and keep doing our business. So thank you for that. Ohio SIOR, Peak Construction, NIAP Crew, Vitalia, Marcus Millichap, Adams and Link, Corfac, J&K. I'm going to run out of breath. Cresco Real Estate, Cushman and Wakefield, Erie Bank. Let's see if I can move us down to the other corner. Harbor Bay, Duffy and Duffy, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, and Anchor Cleveland. What a great group of sponsors, great group of speakers. I look forward to coming to Cleveland next year for the annual and meeting all of you. So thank you. We're signing off. Have a wonderful afternoon. If you're here for CE, signing in and signing out was all you needed to do. So you can log out now, and we'll send you that CE certificate. Thank you all.
Thanks.